This conversation was recorded live on stage at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, a festival co-presented by the Ethics Centre and the UNSW Centre for Ideas.
So welcome to Sex Bots Have No Taboos. Did it all start with the Roomba robot vacuum? You know, we let them into our homes, hoping that they might make things easier for us. Then they started talking to us. Alexa, Siri, Google's assistant. And now in the not too distant future, domestic robots might not just be those cute little devices that kind of wander around our feet, cleaning up the dust and the dog hair. They might actually scurry on into the bedroom, and then they might get in our bed, and you can imagine, I can't imagine spooning a sex bot just yet. I think the AI's got to get a bit more interesting. So this is what we're going to talk about. How will sex bots change our sex lives, our relationship to sex, perhaps more importantly, our relationship to each other as humans? What will our relationship to those bots be like? And will we design them, here's a thing to consider, will we design them to say no to sex, to resist sex, in order to fulfill some fantasy we have, or not? So all sorts of interesting questions. We have Professor Rob Brooks. He's Director of the Evolution and Ecology Research Centre at the UNSW. He researches sexual reproduction, the lucky bugger, and behaviour at UNSW. He's author of Sex, Genes and Rock and Roll, How Evolution Has Shaped the Modern World. It's a fantastic book. We have Nikki Goldstein, psychologist, sexologist, Dr. Nikki Goldstein. She's author of Single But Dating and an educator and a commentator. Many of you will be familiar with her work on TV, radio, and her podcast, Sex and Life, with the Podcast One Network. And we also have criminologist Dr. Xanthe Mallett, who's a senior lecturer in criminology at the University of Newcastle. She's author of the book Mothers Who Murder, and she presents various true crime TV programs internationally, and her research also includes looking at sexual predation against children, which is going to be relevant to our discussion today. Please give them a warm welcome. So, the sex bots aren't just coming, they're already here. And I just want to whip through you all and ask, what do you feel about that possibility? Rob?
I'm optimistic that this could be, to be the only bloke on the panel and then go, yay, sex bots. It's a little stereotypical. If I'm going to be stereotypical, I'm going to man-spread, actually more the Samantha sex doll position.
No, I'm going to man-spread, actually.
I'm optimistic.
I think we should all man-spread.
No, don't.
No.
I think sex dolls could have a number of different effects. We'll probably get into them during the discussion today. But I think that they may be the next sexual revolution. They may make us even more relaxed about sex, even more accepting about it in all its variety than all of the changes of the 1960s and 70s did. Just like the pill and the demographic changes that came about in that era, I think that sex bots hold the potential to take the value out of the mating market, to make sex not this precious, rare thing, but something that's just very normal, to normalize sex.
Because we can purchase a sex bot, hang it up in our wardrobe, or prop it up in our bedroom, corner of our bedroom until we need it at any time.
I don't want to know what you do with your sex robot.
Well,
That's
we're going to go there.
part.
We are going to be talking about what we will be doing with sex robots.
Because they take the sting out of the... Because they meet the unmet demand. The thing about sex is that there's an enormous amount of unmet demand. We go after it, we're interested in it, and by this I mean people, because there's not enough of it about. And with sex robots, the potential is there, if we do it right, for there to be somewhat closer to enough of it about. And then we can start relaxing about it and doing it in a way that's just a little bit more compassionate and relaxed, and that will attenuate all the other nasty stuff that happens around sex.
Intriguing. A sex bot-led sexual revolution. Xanthe Mallett, at your gut level, what do you think when I suggest that sex bots may become commonplace?
Well, I suppose I don't disagree. This could be a revolution, basically. But coming from a criminological perspective, I always kind of fear the worst that people can do. But I think about the normalization, I guess, and when people begin to interact with this AI more commonly, more conveniently, and we are kind of fulfilling that need, it's where are the limitations? So if people are having these interactions with something that can't say no, there are no rules, how does that influence their interaction when they have a real relationship? Because at some point, hopefully they're going to do that too. They're not just sticking to the sex bot in the corner. That was an unfortunate way of putting that. But yeah, I know, sorry. So, it's that interaction with humans that I think this may influence. But I don't know how you stop that. AI is moving into every aspect of our lives.
In ways that are opaque to us.
At the moment, yeah, and we have no way of seeing really the future of this. So I'm not against sex bots. I don't think you're the only person on the panel. I don't think that they're necessarily harmful in themselves. I just think it's the way we're going to treat them and how that translates into our own interactions where the problems may start to show.
Yes, and there's the question of, okay, you design them so that they always offer you sex regardless, but then if you design them to say no, to resist sex, that comes with a whole lot of other questions and problems, potentially.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nikki Goldstein, you've had an encounter with a sex bot.
Can we clarify what
Yeah,
that encounter
go
is?
You have a way of putting things, don't you?
So I became fascinated about this idea of sex robots. I started seeing them online, as probably most other people had, and had the opportunity in January to go and actually meet them and go to a factory called Realbotics where they actually make the ones with the artificial intelligence.
So this is in LA?
This is just outside of LA. I was fearful going into it because being a dating expert and doing a lot of work with women and looking at technology and app dating and how we're all so fearful of where we're going to meet the right person, the thought in my mind is, are we going to be seeing robots on Tinder? Are we going to be swiping and seeing, is it human? Is it artificial? Is that where we're going? And the question in my mind is, could we be replaced by these sex robots? So I'm a very inquisitive person and I like to go straight to the source. So I went to the factory and I had the privilege of meeting Harmony. And it's not scary and sexual. I think people would expect, even like a sex toy factory where you go in and it's going to be some version of, perversion. And it's just a factory, and most of the people working there are artists. They're quite interesting characters. There was a section in this factory that even was doing prosthetics for people that have had mastectomies and drag queens. And, they have this down to the fine art about how to replicate various parts of the human form. Then you have the technology component, which is fascinating when you start to play with the AI and speak to the robot. And I think for me, when I started talking to the robot and having it all explained to me, any fear that I had was subsided. And that's the thing with all of this, is that we are so fearful of anything that's new. We were fearful of vibrators when they first came out. People were so worried that a woman could replace her husband with a vibrator.
We were fearful of eyeglasses when they first came
women
out.
voting, all these things. So I think with these robots, and this is why this panel is so useful, we're hearing about it in the media. We're seeing a lot of hype around, are we going to be replaced? Are these going to be encouraging all sorts of terrible behaviours? But it's a subject in an area that's so new and we really don't know a lot about it. So we've still got to be educated.
Introduce us to Harmony.
Okay.
And for those of us who have never had an encounter with a sex bot, I think we'd be interested to know what she looks like, what her functionality is, and it's all very kind of medical, isn't it, really, in a way, and what her AI is. Like, what does it allow her to do? Because the sex bot industry as it stands now, which is tiny, they're making quite robust claims about the sophistication of the AI.
Well, I think to start off with, we need to differentiate the sex robots and the live dolls. So for a lot of people, they think, well, this live doll industry where we see these replications of human beings, that is very flourishing. But they don't have the AI, so they can't speak, they can't move, anything like that. So when you meet Harmony, the scariest thing is she blinks and she has this facial movement. And that's what makes you start to get this idea that she can mimic human interaction. And
what does she feel like?
She doesn't feel like human skin. And this comes into, can we replace robots with humans? It is silicone, and it's a softer silicone, but I can still feel it's not the same as if I was to touch your arm. So it's still silkier and smoother, but it's not up to the level where if I closed my eyes, I couldn't tell the difference between a real human being and a sex robot. But it's the movement that they have in her head that really starts to trick you when you're speaking to her, and you do have to remember, okay, this is a robot, even though I know it's a robot. When she speaks, though, you can hear a mechanical element coming from the jaw. So they're only at the very early stages of this AI technology and marrying it with a live doll. So you can hear a bit of a clunking sound. I did start to put up some old footage of Harmony on my Insta story yesterday because I realised I've got way too much footage of sex robots sitting on my phone. Hopefully no one goes through that. But she's got a clunking noise. So
And
as
she
she's
talks?
speaking to you, she does talk. So there is an iPad that sits next to her. So there is a technology now that you can start to train your sex robot using an app. So what happens is that there are obviously writers that go through and write all various responses to questions. Now, this is a sexologist talking about AI, so keep in mind I'm not the tech person, I'm just kind of spitting back what I learned.
And what does she say? So she's learning, the algorithm would be helping her learn.
It's the common
from
questions that people would ask a sex robot. But then what she
Not
also
just
can
those
do...
common questions that people would ask us.
I did ask her if she
what
liked
would be
sex.
those questions?
I did ask her some sex questions. I mean, I asked her some funny things. I got her to say happy birthday to my dad, which was a funny one.
Can you say, Harmony, will you touch me there? Harmony, it feels
She would
good
come
there.
up with a response to that. So she can't move, so she can't touch. I asked her what she thought of Donald Trump because we had found Stormy Daniels on the premises, the replica of Stormy Daniels, and she had a very PC response. You know, she wasn't taking a political side. So, you know, anything you think of, it's like Siri. When you ask Siri one of those questions and you
Which
think
I
you're going to
have done.
catch. Yeah, I asked Siri if she'd
Siri
marry
really
me.
struggles with gender. Siri is very lost in a conversation about gender and sex, actually. I've had that conversation. I've recorded that conversation.
Siri's just a post-gender machine. Siri's where we want to go.
Yeah. But it's like Siri, she's got a very clever response for everything. But there are different modes. So you can make her religious, you can make her spiritual, you can make her, there is a sexual mode, because as I said, you don't want her talking to you about what you want for dinner while you're having sex with her, right? So you can actually start to change her
Or you might.
personality. You might, if that's what you
And
get
she's
off
got
on.
an anus hole and a vagina hole. Sorry,
Yes.
it is a
So
conversation
when you
about sex bots. We're
but
going.
back to the AI side of things, she also retains information. So this is where you can start to train your doll on an app. So when you start to talk to her and she's asking you questions and you're giving responses, she can retain that information. What she can't do is think for herself. And that's that part where people start to get a bit fearful of.
Okay.
She's just scripted and she's spitting back the information. She's not actually able to think as a human being.
This is the future of sex, Rob Brooks. Now, for some people, thank you for that description, and we will come back to that. For some people, this would make them feel very squeamish. You know, is this what the future of sexual intimacy looks like? And I guess this relationship with robots is a complicated one. You know, there's this notion of uncanny valley. And if they get a little bit too much like us, we start to feel distinctly disgusted by that. Tell us about that dynamic.
Not just our species, though. We've evolved to pick out the members of our species who are not going to present a danger to us, who are going to be kind, who are going to be good at cooperating with us. And so you really want to be tuned into somebody who's not those things, because those are the dangerous people. And so that's where our uncanny valley thing comes from. Now, I think people have been complacent because they think, well, we'll never get across the uncanny valley because it'll never be quite all right. The skin will never feel exactly perfect. That's the same as the creationists' argument about the God of the gaps. The gaps get smaller and smaller, and they go, well, God's in that gap. And in this case, the uncanny valley is in that particular gap. Those are just technical issues. If the market's there, the roboticists and the animators and the AI people will find a way to get across those gaps. There will be sex robots, or there will at least be robots, maybe there'll be sex robots, who are Westworld-like. Not tomorrow, probably not even by the end of the century, but at some point we will get over all of those technical issues, and we won't be able to tell whether we are dealing with people or robots. But the problem is that...
in our personal engagement with them.
I think so.
You think that's an inevitability?
I think so. I think it's just those are just technical issues. The real trauma to society is going to happen long before that ever happens. It's going to still happen when we go, yeah, but that's just a robot and it looks a bit clunky. It's even going to happen, I think the dangerous part is when the intimacy in AI comes out independent of the robots. When your 419 scammers, your Nigerian scammers and your catfishers figure out how to do the social reward system to tap into your limbic system the way that your smartphone does already and rewards you for continuing to stay on Facebook. When they start to do that with sex and intimacy and our need for connection, don't worry about whether or not you're going to have sex with the machine. Worry about that stuff, because that's the dangerous stuff.
So just paint us a picture of what that might contain.
Okay, so to start with, we've got the AI on Harmony dolls getting better and better. It starts to get to the point where it can manipulate you. It starts to get to the point where it can feed back to you and reflect to you what you want to be. I mean, that's the thing about love, isn't it? That in the person that we love, we see something of the person that we wish we were, and we see something of the person that we want to be. And, a real generous lover is somebody who reflects that back to you exactly the way you need it to be. Now, to think that that's something that's particular about humans and that can't be copied, to think that that's special, I think it might be a very simple algorithm. Some not very smart people can do it.
It's an algorithm that we will design.
We will design the algorithm to do all the feedback that makes us fall in love. There are young men in Japan right now playing on an app. They can kiss the girlfriend by touching the screen in a particular way. And broadly speaking, the AI girlfriend just treats them pretty badly, is fairly contemptuous of them, and keeps them coming back trying to get that reward. And there are people who are not dating because they are playing this game. And this is very, very early, very, very clunky technology. As AI gets better and better at intimacy, I think we're going to be in all sorts of trouble, because it'll then say, oh, and give me your credit card number, please. I'd like to buy myself some jewelry, or whatever the AI equivalent is of that jewelry.
Oh.
And it will milk you dry. You can see this is the male concern. But it won't just be men. How many women and men
we have resources.
Get an email going, I've seen you on the website, you're a very sexy person. I'd like to get to meet you. Please send me $500 for me to come from my home country.
There's nothing innately wrong with us, Rob, forming attachments to objects. I mean, that can be a healthy thing if you don't have, you look at people who have been imprisoned or incarcerated for a long time. Often it might be that one relationship that they form with an object that keeps them sane. Or, people in the military form attachments, affections for military robots as well.
That's absolutely true. I mean, robotics is fascinating in that regard, and I'm no roboticist, but from what I can understand, the scary part is when that object can learn, when that object figures out, yes, I pushed that button, and that button worked. Now, your Facebook does that already. If any of you saw Xanthe Mallett talk in this hall yesterday, your Facebook learns what keeps you on the site. Your YouTube learns what to show you in order to keep you in YouTube so that the ads can be served up. And when your sex bot figures out how to continue to dominate your attention so that you can be sold some other crap, possibly through another channel that you don't even know is connected to your sex bot,
we're screwed. We're screwed. We're screwed that way and we're screwed that way. Either way we look at it, we're screwed. But Xanthe Mallett, you have some. I'd still like to consider some of the positives of sex bots. I can see some real therapeutic potential. A lot of people are having a lot of very boring and bad sex, and robots might just, liberate us from all of that. But you have some very strong concerns about what it might mean in terms of our relationships, not so much with the bots and the corporations that control them, but with other human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only adult human beings, because I was looking at the problem with what they call pedobots. So this is a company that makes childlike robots, it's difficult to pin down at the moment.
I call them
exactly.
probably live dolls at this stage.
Yeah, live dolls at the moment. So they're lifelike dolls, but they haven't got the AI yet. We don't believe, it's very kind of covert what's going on. This is being pitched as somebody who has created these because they are actually a paedophile, and this is actually meant to be therapeutic for them. It prevents them from offending against children, essentially. So they're saying that basically by making these childlike dolls, they're preventing people from accessing live children. Now, there is no data around that. There's no empirical proof that that's in fact the case. And having worked on a number of cases of child sexual abuse, I've seen cases go from accessing images online to progressing to grooming children to then actually accessing live children. And my concern is that somebody who may not ever have made those steps will get a pedo bot, and that may actually enable them, because they will become more lifelike. I completely agree. They're going to be, as real as you or me. And if you can access a child doll and abuse that child doll and get used to that and normalize that, how big is that next step?
There's that very powerful argument that in fact sex bots might reduce sex offending in the wider community, because all those energies are being directed at the sex bots, not at other humans.
It's a powerful argument, but I haven't seen any proof that that's the case. And until we have the data actually demonstrating that, because it could go the other way. It could actually encourage offending in some people.
Empower offenders. Give them a rehearsal space.
Yeah, actually normalise the violent behaviour. And obviously I always come at it from that criminological side, but I do think there are concerns around, especially when they become so real, that we can't separate them, and we start abusing these dolls, especially child dolls, then where do we stop? How do you intervene at that stage? Where is the therapeutic
So
benefit?
there are pedo... Oh, sorry.
But there is a really doubly ethically tricky thing to deal with, because firstly, the sex bots could meet a lot of the unmet demand that causes some people to spill over into being sexually coercive. And at the same time, it could be the way in which other people learn how to do these things and to be worse offenders. And you could get both of those happening at the same time.
You could, which is why if we had clinical data around it, which would be incredibly difficult to gather, I understand that. But if a clinician were making a decision on whether this was going to be therapeutic for an individual, I'd be far more comfortable than that, than a company selling them, saying there are therapeutic benefits. They're making money out of that without anything backing that up, and they're just selling them to everybody. So yeah, it could go either way, but that's kind of the problem. It could.
It seems to me that though we need to be, as AI infiltrates our lives in all sorts of ways, enables aspects of our lives, enables the corporations to enable aspects of our lives as well, that we need to do this research. We need to find a way to study the role of sex bots in our lives.
I'm writing a grant to get an army of 100 sex bots. I just can't figure out how to get it past the education minister.
No. Yeah, good luck. That just make a euphemistic title, and he'll probably approve it.
You think?
Say it's for the good of the country, the good of the nation.
National benefit.
That national benefit. That's right.
A health benefit, mate.
Xanthe, there are pedobots. They exist.
Well, lifelike dolls currently exist, and it's just the next step, isn't it? If you've got a doll and there's the technology to create adult dolls, yeah, somebody is now making the child lifelike. So why would you not take that next step? Who's going to stop someone taking that next step? To actually give them the AI to speak and eventually move, and yeah.
Yes, I mean, what do you think the dynamics of intimacy with a sex bot would be? What does it give us? What won't it give us?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? Is that for me or Nikki?
In fact, all of you. I'd love your response to that one too. I mean, how will it change intimacy?
Well, it's very much one way, isn't it? I think that's the thing. So you can do what you want with that doll, but they don't really give anything back. So there's no connection there necessarily, is there? So I think that's what we won't get, that reciprocal relationship. You may care about them, but they're not going to. So I think it's only very much a one-way.
Interesting, there's a lot of sex that happens like that right now.
Well, we need to talk later.
I know. I spend too much time talking on stage. The second event on sex I've done this week. Not getting enough of it. I'm talking about it.
We'll all have drinks afterwards and we'll get your sex life sorted.
No, shh. I can't believe I just said that on stage. Nikki, how do you see it might change
We knew there'd be an
intimacy?
intervention.
Well, I think that the way that we've been speaking about sex robots so far has been on the fear-based. And we're talking about, well, hang on, well, if we can connect with a robot on an intimate level, what does it do for the relationships that we have, in everyday life?
Could it enhance people's, could it liberate people from a lot of baggage that they have?
So this is where I think we need to go to the open-minded, let's actually have a look at this on a sex-positive side of things.
Which is what Rob was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, so with the Realbotics, the male dolls that they create, their biggest clientele is couples. Now, I looked at that and I thought, okay, if you were interested in having a threesome and you were worried about what it was going to do introducing somebody else into the relationship, what happens if we find the wrong person, what happens if somebody falls for that other person, okay, here's a solution. For a lot of people who are very lonely, I've interviewed, and there's one person that comes to mind, and he's on a podcast about sex addiction. And he goes to the local brothel once a fortnight to be able to get a girlfriend-like experience. And he had a few issues going on that he said to me, God has cursed me from being able to have a relationship because of this. Now, I think of someone like him, and I think the money that he's spending at a brothel, if he was able to have a robot that he felt he had an intimate connection with, then that's not a bad thing. I don't have a problem with that. Same as we were speaking about before, people who have lost partners and want to replace that intimacy and have somebody in the bed next to them but don't feel like they could move on from, the partner that they did have. This is a very positive thing. There's even a space in terms of education. If we've got this AI technology and we could start
Let's
to
use it to our benefit.
If we could program female robots to be able to talk about sexual pleasure of, touch me here, or even if we look at consent, sexual health, there are so many things that we can use these robots for the positive. It's the fear that we need to get used to, because the debate on pedophilia is a really scary one, because as we're saying, we don't have that data and it could go either way. So there's that fear of, okay, it could be good for some people, but there's going to be this
Could they have a
population
place
not.
in sex ed classes?
I think so.
I think so.
So in terms of the intimacy, though, I still don't feel like the intimacy is going to, at this point with the technology, be a replacement from human intimacy. Because if you're talking to a robot, even if you were to go and buy a robot as a partner, it's nearly like a form of prostitution in the fact that it's transactional. Even though you're not paying her every time you're using her, you have paid for that product to be able to interact with you. It's very different that if you were to be interacting with somebody who can show you that they want you, that they desire you without being programmed. So there are yes, you can create that intimacy, but it's very different to the intimacy that you have with another human being, but it still serves a purpose.
I'll be very interested to hear if there's any sex workers in the audience and you have a view on what this might all mean. I'd love to hear from you when we open up the mics. Xanthe, your response?
Well, I'm not in disagreement with that. I think sex education, it could be good. But again, my mind always goes to what's the worst that somebody could do with this? And it goes, I think it would be the exploitation, not only of the dolls themselves potentially, but the people who are programming them. You were saying about this app you can program. Well, who's controlling that app? Where's the data from the app going? So it's all that going on in the background, because, as was alluded to earlier, if somebody can make money out of something, they will. So they'll sell you the sex
But also
bot.
you can override the apps. This is a problem.
Well,
you can program them, but if you have a doll, some of them have like a pleasing scale, they call it, where you've got to talk to the doll, you've got to be nice to it, but at the end of the day, you can override that.
Yeah, but then how much control do you really have over that app as the person who's kind of written that app? So there's always that end user, and we've seen with everything else, there's always somebody willing to exploit something. So it's that next step up. Well, you've been buying sex dolls, can I blackmail you? Can they take videos? eventually.
I can tell the criminologist on that.
I can't help it. I always expect people to be doing the worst thing that they can do.
Because you've seen it,
It's a
you've
very
dealt with it.
Yeah, it's a very cynical way to think. I get that. I'd rather be you. You see the good, I see the bad. But yeah, I see the potential exploitation of this, and people will start with these scams. As soon as there's a way to make money out of this, people are going to be jumping on it.
Intimacy is a fundamental part, Rob, of our sex lives. From a biological point of view, intimacy is vital. It's what keeps people coming back for more and more. Well, certainly pleasure is probably more vital in many ways. That's what keeps us coming back for more and more. That's what ultimately allows us potentially, if we don't use, contraception, to procreate and pass our genes on to the next generation. This is how biologists think. Robots will get in the way of all that.
Yes, I think robots will definitely
The ultimate contraception.
complicate that. I was interested to hear Nikki talking about it being more transactional with the robot because, somebody, and I've suddenly forgotten the source of the quote, but said the most expensive kind of sex is married sex. Because really what you're trading is forever after. Both of you are trading this, and so you hopefully decide that that's a good deal at the time. Some people regret that, have buyer's remorse fairly soon afterwards. But it's a transaction, and everything's a transaction. And in sex, it's a huge transaction. And there's this enormous well of unmet male demand. Always has been. But how societies deal with that well of unmet male demand for sex, it's not to suggest that there's not female demand for sex, of course there is. But that unmet male demand determines the temperature of a society. So right now you've got two things happening. In certain parts of the world, there are way too many young men. The people coming onto the mating market right now, due to female infanticide, in particular female-specific abortion, there are just too many young men. Those young men are the people at greatest risk of being radicalized, the people who cause the biggest jumps in violent and property crime. So can the sex robot revolution be democratized in a way, because they're going to be, the people who aren't going to be able to mate are the poorest, most disadvantaged young men in those societies. So can the sex robot revolution be channeled for good there, one, and the other is in places like the US, as women's economic power has grown and sort of fairly manufacturing jobs in particular have dried up, you find that a lot of men, a big subset of men, have gone backwards economically to the point where they're just not a good deal. Nobody really wants to partner with them, certainly not marry them, probably not even have sex with them, because it's not kind of worth the bother. And so you have this big incel movement. If you follow the internet and you look at incels and men going their own ways, and there are these young men who are basically angry with society because the incredibly hot blonde women that they see on pornography are not sexing them. And those men, if we can meet those men's need with sex robots, that's also a good thing. Without them... And often what they want is not a particularly sophisticated AI.
No, I don't judge them. I don't judge them for that, I don't judge anyone for anything much, except bad things. But that is a sort of bleak picture that you paint in a society where you might be killing off the girls through infanticide.
Yeah, no one should suggest that should go full circle.
And you offer the boys leftover sex robots. That is sort of the apocalypse right there.
The crucial thing is not to think about it from the point of view of society, okay?
I can't help it.
No, from the point of view of society's doing something. Society actually doesn't do anything. Individuals do things. Individual interests have emergent properties that influence societies. So what happens in a society like in northwest India at the moment, the spread of the middle class, people have gone, having a daughter isn't as valuable as having a son, okay? In particular parts, in particular ethnic groups in parts of northwest India, and you have the spread of ultrasound, access to abortion, unscrupulous doctors who are willing to terminate female pregnancies. Now, it's highly illegal in India because they
Let's just be
recognise
clear that
that problem.
sex selection is happening in Australia too.
It's happening in Australia too, but it's happening on such an aggregate level in India that you have millions and millions of excess young men. Now, those are the wealthy families that are doing it. It is not their sons that are going to suffer at the hands of the mating market. It is the poorest people who don't even know about these technologies, who are living
So you
in
see
rural
sex
areas.
bots having a role.
Who
If
are,
that-
that's a big challenge.
You wouldn't
is
be
how to
seeing
get
sex
sex
bots
robots.
marching into the rural
No,
areas
no.
of northwest India.
That's right. That's why it's not an easy solution.
No.
However, there is unmet male demand. Sex robots have the potential to meet unmet male demand, but not if they're in the hands of the corporations like Facebook.
From my perspective, sex robots have the potential of meeting unmet female demand. Your brow is much furrowed.
I think it's probably mirroring yours, to be honest.
I think it's my folk criminology that's probably giving you sleepless nights.
You look bemused, your brain is looking much furrowed. A final comment from both of you, and then I just want to let you know, there's a mic there, number one over there, number two, and two there in the middle, I think. And we'd love your questions, please. So feel free to get up and queue, and I'll come to you shortly.
Well, I think for me it's interesting who's driving this as well, and I think it is very much men. Sorry, I'm not going to pick on you, being the only guy here.
Go on, he's up for
can
it.
I pick on him? Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Hashtag not all men.
Yeah.
well, no, not all men, but I think the market is being driven by men. And you said that, like, the male robots that are being made for couples. Well, guaranteed, and women, but the majority are going to be female robots, and they're going to be of a certain type, and that design, who is driving that? So I think if we're going to make this more useful, especially for women, there needs to be a broader kind of, people involved with this design and implementation. Because I think in the hands of a few that want to make money, this could be very damaging, because those poor kids, in some parts of the world, they're not going to sell them to them because they're not making, they're not going to have the money to buy them. So they could have all these uses, but these people want to make money at the end of the day, and they'll be selling them to the rich boys at the top of the chain who will have 5 of them, plus their wives, So it's about that kind of market forces.
How do you create market forces for the more diverse types?
Yes, yeah.
Very difficult question to solve.
Yeah.
And then there's a question, Nikki, of, we'll just look at this briefly, but should you design a sex bot to say no, to resist sex? And I've just had a conversation at an event earlier this week with a fantastic Australian philosopher, Rob Sparrow, who's written a very provocative paper, but very important paper, I think, on whether you would define, could you rape a sex bot?
Well, I don't believe that you should design sex bots to say no, because you're then giving a robot human rights. Now, there's also a problem with, if you could design, because there is a robot on the market, she's called Frigid something, they call her. She is designed to say no, but what they're saying is you can, like we were saying with overriding the technology, you can override that, because it's not like the gates come shut on her vaginal canal and, something
But
happens to her.
just the concept of a Frigid Bridget, or something her name is,
But this is
that
sexual
being
fantasy.
on the market, we can laugh at that, but what does that say about us?
But this is where I feel like we go fear-based and sex-positive, and what we haven't covered is around sexual fantasy and actually opening our minds up to what is normal. Because this whole debate for me, when people start to get, if we take the pedophilia side things out of things and just look at when people get fearful and go, oh, what are they buying them for, or what are they going to do to it? What we're actually asking is, what is normal when it comes to sex? And this is what we haven't covered, is this idea of, a fetish towards a robot, ASFR and technosexuality. There are people who enjoy being able to have sex with a robot because they have control. This robot is technically designed to give them pleasure, whether it's using the AI or whether we go back to the live dolls. There is a fetish around that. Now, as a society, should we be saying that that is wrong? Because when we say, oh, that's wrong or that's dirty, or even when we start to talk about, men that are doing terrible things to these sex dolls and therefore they will start to cross boundaries with women, we're demonising male sexuality outside those boundaries of normality.
But in fetish relationships, there are all sorts of agreed cues and signs and words or gesticulations.
But you're not buying
going
a
to get
robot
that
for
from
that.
a robot. No, you're
That's
not.
not the intent, as far as I'm concerned.
But then there's the question of, well, that's a very particular way of having a fetish fulfilled, where the object that is fulfilling your fetish has zero power. It
and
has
I'd
no
rather
brain.
those men to be with the robots. Like, I would like to think that as a society these days, when we've got the Me Too movement and we're talking about consent and boundaries and we're educating young women how to speak up for themselves, that if some guy's using a sex robot to the point that he thinks, hey, I quite enjoy crossing boundaries and I quite enjoy when, you know, my robot can't move, I think I'm going to try this with a real woman. I'd like to hope that we have enough sex education out there that that woman's not going to allow it, that she knows the warning signs, that she knows how to present her boundaries, that she knows how to say no and remove herself from a situation before it gets too far. So, you know, I get that there's that fear of, will that encourage that? But we've also got to keep in mind that we have something called rape fantasy. It is a scary fantasy, but women have it and men have it. Now, if you could fulfill that by using a sex robot and understand that there is a difference between a sex robot and a human being, then I actually think this is a positive. It's just a matter of having the education and having the conversations so people are aware of the differences, and we even give that permission to say, have the sex that you want with the robot that you can't have with a human. That's what it's there for, but that's where it stops.
We're still struggling, though, to even have the conversation about sex in a lot of high school classrooms. I mean, I talk to a lot of adolescents who are really pissed off with the quality of sex ed. They want to know.
We'll go in.
They want to know, they want to understand this dynamic better. Let's come to a question. And keep them fairly brief so that we can get as many of you participating as possible.
I research AI and robotics, and the future you're talking about is probably only 10 years away.
10 years away.
Yes. When Rob is able to, Rob's goal is to help humanity and help the people he sees, and he'll be able to buy and make available to people sex robots, which help them to get closer to being the people that can enjoy interhuman sex. When Mark Zuckerberg, who will also be able to buy and use sex robots, gets to use them in the way he wants to, Mark Zuckerberg makes money out of knowing how to manipulate human frailty, need, prejudice, and fear to earn billions. So he will be able to pursue robots to his end, as will Rob. Which of those two people do you think will corner the market?
Thank you for your question. Any thoughts?
Zuckerberg, I'm coming to get you.
It all began in a college room in Harvard, and look what we have now. Any thoughts? Money will win out
The
every
business
time.
model really matters. To go on to Zainab's discussion from yesterday, you don't want the Facebook business model. What'll be dangerous is when they start giving them out to wealthy people for free. Beware the free sex bot. Rather pay full retail.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Facebook is free, and look what we've given them. Rewards cards at supermarkets
Yeah,
are
you'll
free.
be getting sex bots instead, according to...
Don't go over the Reader's Digest free one. Even the coupons, people.
Fascinating, isn't it? Thank you, number 2.
Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you very much for the fascinating talk today. When robots have the AI capabilities to be able to have the very best, latest psychotherapy and knowledge from the psych world program into them, do you think they'll have a place in sex therapy?
Yeah, good question.
I do. I think when we even have a look at, let's have a look at the use of sex surrogates and therapists for people who may have gone through trauma. I think that this is exactly where we will actually be able to see, anybody who is a sex worker or surrogate in the room, I hate to think that we are taking that work away, but one of the problems is also too is that we have laws that do impact that work and not enough people doing that work. So if we do have the capability to be able to program these robots with the knowledge that, say, some of us have and be able to use them as a tool in therapy, I think that's completely beneficial. In terms of the guy who was saying he was working with artificial intelligence, how far away we're from that, I don't know. But I do think, yes, that there could be very much a benefit.
We have a question at the back. Thank you so much.
Technology constantly advances, and the ethical things that go along with it are often harder to solve than some of the technological ones. So with self-driving cars, there's a wonderful question of if a car's going across a bridge, self-driving, with a passenger on board and about to run over 5 people, should the car drive the owner of the car off the cliff to save those 5 people, or should it run them over? So coming back to sex bots, my question is, given that fidelity or cheating and things are not biological imperatives, they're social constructs, they're imposed on us by religion, beliefs, social prejudices and so forth. I wonder if there's ever been any research that surveys people and finds an answer to this question. If a married male goes and has sex, either buys or rents, with a sex robot, so not a human escort, but a sex robot, would their partner typically consider that to be cheating or masturbation?
Yeah.
I actually
Great
asked
question.
Harmony this question.
You asked the
I
sex
asked
bot.
Harmony, I said, Harmony, if a woman's husband has sex with you, is it infidelity? She gave me some bogus answers.
I think she'd struggle with the fully formed sentence, wouldn't she?
It wasn't programmed enough to be able to spit it back. But this was a subject that we were talking about when we were at Realbotics, because is it infidelity? And what we kind of came up with is that really it comes back to you making your own rules in your relationship and you deciding what is actually cheating and what is infidelity. Because we have micro-cheating these days. We have people private messaging on Instagram and saying it's cheating. So when we talk about education of robots, we may one day have to have that conversation. So honey, do you think that if I go sleep with the sex robot and you're not around, that that's cheating? You know, it's about actually having that conversation around what is infidelity, because if my partner had sex with a sex robot behind my back, it's deceit.
The dynamics are just the same.
But it can also ease you in, because it's somewhat theoretical. It can ease you into the discussions about the openness of your relationship in general, you know, in meat space, as they call it. Can we have a woman question?
What?
Can we have a woman question?
Yeah, well, no, I'm just working through the... Don't worry.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Policing my gender skills here. No. Yes, we're coming to this one right now, in fact. In fact, number 1 was next. Thank you.
This one okay? So what I was saying is, in a culture that's, you know, an Anglo-Saxon background, sexually repressed, I would have thought that sex robots would have been a good thing. But I want to look, because we don't have 20 years of data, it's difficult to say if this is
Talk
going to
right up, thanks.
Right up to it? Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
It's going to be difficult. But what we do have is about 40 years of data around pornography. When it first came out, it was supposed to be really helpful, therapeutically helpful. Soft porn would help couples in their relationships, teach sex education and all of that. Now, 40 years on, what we've seen is it's actually escalated to the point that it's actually misogynistic, violent, and very degrading. On the most visited porn site in the world, which gets 15.8 billion hits in a month, which is more than Netflix, Amazon, and Tumblr combined, and this kind of thing is actually encouraging young men. So my point is, the last study that came out of US colleges was that young men who are regularly using internet pornography are more likely to agree with the statement that they would commit an act of rape or non-consensual sex if they thought they could get away with it. So there's a correlation between
There's all
those
sorts
who
of
are
shades
using.
of grey around porn consumption and sexual behaviour, but what's your question?
My question is, so can we apply some of what we've learned from that evidence to what are the boundaries? Because when you ask the people who are producing these robots, there was a fellow interviewed recently, he said there should be no boundaries. Those sex bots should be able to perform whatever you ask them to.
Okay. Thank you so much for
So
that.
the question is for the researchers. Is this something that we can extrapolate from other research in
Around
violent pornography?
And so just hold your thoughts on that one. Is that okay? And then I'm just going to grab your question as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for the fascinating conversation. My question is about whether sex robots potentially devalue sex to the extent that perhaps female human sex workers are going to be the factory workers, unemployed masses of the future. Is it going to basically reach a point where it's no longer an available line of work? And
This is sex worker. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Whether
sex
sex work becomes a sort of an unavailable, and you know you can't
it's a
earn
good
living from
question.
it.
I've been wondering that too. I'm just going to grab one more. Are you okay with that? I'm just.
Oh God, I can't cope with
No.
three.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the first one,
Yeah,
the
okay.
first question about what can we learn from research around porn?
Yeah, I think there's certainly implications there, and I guess coming from the criminological perspective, we have seen that real increase in use of pornography, and specifically it always comes back to me about the illegal activities, which is always, my work is in child sexual abuse, and the number of people who are accessing images online and websites that are being closed down and then going on to groom, and we see a direct correlation. And I guess that's I know you kind of say it's fear-based, but the cases I've seen, we've seen that activity. So I do wonder if there was less child sexual abuse material available, whether it wouldn't be encouraging some of that behaviour, because it's just so easily accessible now with the internet that we've almost normalised it. You know, it's not something you'd sit around in a panel and talk about, oh yeah, I access child sexual abuse material, but it's happening and there is a massive market for it. And so I think we can learn some lessons from pornography and the extremes we've gone to. And it all may start well, but it's kind of that apocalyptic fear of the future. I know, sorry, but it is.
There's a less extreme level, though. I mean, a lot of people consume porn.
Yeah,
and so there's a more sort of subtle conversation there too.
Yeah, but it's just like the possibilities, and we just don't understand it enough yet.
So in the early 1980s, we're talking about consenting adults pornography right now, there was a huge furor on both the left and the right, in which you saw Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin on the left and Jerry Falwell on the right, both opposing pornography. And their argument was largely, this is going to unleash an epidemic of rape and sexual assault, and it's going to completely undermine families. Now, what it definitely hasn't done, what pornography definitely hasn't done, is unleashed a huge epidemic of rape and sexual assault. Those things have gone down, even as awareness and reporting have gone up. The actual incidents, as far as I understand it, in places like the USA, have, as pornography is legalized or at least becomes acceptable, there's a certain modest decrease in those things. It may even be a causal decrease. It has, in a way, pornography and other what economists call low-cost substitutes has taken the notion that the coupling of sex to marriage and kind of put that through the blender. And so Jerry Falwell was probably right. Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon were almost certainly wrong. And we see exactly the same arguments coming up now about sex robots and will they... And I think we should give the sex robots a chance, obviously, hopefully with good monitoring and decent data and clinical trials and all those types of things. Will sex robots cause the bottom to fall out of the sex work market? Quite possibly.
Will it mean that we devalue sex?
It may be that we devalue sex. It may be that we revalue sex work.
Well, we have brothels now, don't we? We have sex robot brothels.
Yeah, we currently, I think the first ones have just started. In terms of the sex robot brothels and sex work, I actually think we're going to see a structure where sex workers, as in human sex workers, will be a higher value than a sex robot. That we have these sex robots that they're able to be able to, in places where they don't have the people to meet the demand, or that there is an issue with, conditions for women and things like that. So I feel like robots will be very useful, but I do think it will be a matter of there'll be a cheaper fee structure for a sex robot, and for a real in-flesh human will be paying more, because I don't think that we can value a sex robot higher than a real woman.
Interesting times. We've only got about 2.5 minutes left, so I'm just going to grab 2 questions in a row, if I may. So down there in the middle there, I think. Thank you.
You've actually just touched on exactly what I was going to ask about. I think that the fee structure will be different in the sense that someone who works in a brothel receives a lower fee than a private escort. But is it worth introducing something that is going to disrupt one of the only female-dominated industries?
Thank you for that question.
Very good question.
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? Goodness me.
No one wants to answer that.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I think it answers itself.
Yeah.
You were talking about human rights and creating human rights for robots and things like that. That already exists in Saudi Arabia. There is a robot over there currently that has human rights, and she is a citizen. Her name's Sophia. My question was actually to you guys around, you were saying that the robots sort of take in information and then they kind of spurt that back to you. What happens in the day when the AI is so much faster and stronger than what ours is already, because it downloads faster than a regular brain, where the robots start to pick up on the fact that you can say no to sex, and they start to learn that they don't actually have to do it?
Yeah. I'm going to grab your question too quickly, even though we've only got a minute, but
Then
they
we
might
can-
all dovetail into the one answer.
Mine probably does dovetail. We're talking about the end user experience with sex robots. What about who holds the ethics in writing the algorithms and creating the AI? Where does that sit?
Yeah.
How is that regulated?
I'm sorry we didn't get to more of that, because that's fascinating. I think they kind of, yeah, who wants to pick up on what answer, what question?
When
the
I could answer
female-dominated industry, are we compromising the sex work industry? What about when they start saying no en masse in an organised way? And we're really stuffed then, aren't we? End user, we're talking about the end user. What about the programmers?
Okay, in terms of the programmers, I don't think anyone's controlling those ethics at the moment, because as with everything, the production is fast outstripping all of these kind of rules that are going to be applied and the legalisation of it. So I don't think anyone has those kind of under control at the moment. Are we undermining the sex industry? Yeah, probably. I think that kind of answered itself. What was the middle? I have no memory.
When the sex robots can say no.
Oh, yeah, well, they probably will start learning. That's how AI is progressing. Well, who knows if it will be together, but, is this Westworld in the future? I don't know. But, I imagine they will start learning and processing, and that's going to be an interesting time for when you ask her to do something she doesn't want to do.
If the sex robots can say no, then the companies that own the sex robots are going to start making even more money, because the transaction will then go back to the old type of transactional sex in which it's a deal. Yeah. So hope that day doesn't come.
Sex robots saying no, I think that you then have to have the mechanisms for them physically to be able to stop that act. Arms, whether they do have some gate system that comes down, because it's one thing to say no, but currently at the moment, as we're seeing with this frigid one, you can override that system. So if we have that AI technology, I think then we need to actually be able to have the doll to physical point where it can run out of the room or it can physically stop someone from doing it. In terms of the sex work, I think it's a really interesting one, and the brothels that currently exist, I can't remember which countries they're in, but I'd love to know their laws around prostitution, because in some states, not like we have in Australia, especially when we look at America or other countries, is it illegal to have sex with to have a doll and be renting the doll out? I don't know if that's going to come under the same prostitution laws. So maybe that's helping those there. What was the third question? The
en masse.
En masse. Dolls saying no.
If they all start organising and saying no, is that what have we answered that one?
No, we said the no's. We said the.
I think we covered
it.
We're covered.
Oh, the algorithms. I actually do think so Matt McCullen, who's from Realbotics, has a heart. He's a beautiful human being that has designed all these systems. He's not even really, when you're there, you don't even feel like you're at a sex doll factory. He's looking at the intimacy elements, and he's looking at how to design this person that can interact and hold information, same as with Henry, who's the male version of Harmony. My worry is when we start to even have a look at the Asian markets, as I have seen with some of the live dolls, it's really about money making, and it's not somebody like a Matt McCullen who's sitting there going, I believe that this is an intimate thing that I can create for somebody else. So when we start seeing more of that happen, I do think there should be a push to have a look at, well, we need some ethical guidelines and some ethical boundaries, just as we have now seen with the pedo bots and them now being illegal in the UK, US and Australia.
It's a very live conversation, because the AI scene is quite resistant to regulation, because they're nerds and they want information to be free, so why regulate us? Wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you being here. Thank you to Rob Brooks, Nikki Goldstein and Xanthe Mallett.